At 7:04, the front desk called my cell. "Mrs. Mercer, Elise Ward is in the lobby. Mr. Mercer says her guest pass was denied by mistake." Through the phone, I heard Graham arguing with someone. Lorraine's voice floated behind his, sharp and offended. Elise was probably standing beneath the chandelier with her bottle of wine and the leather portfolio Graham had mentioned 3 times. "It wasn't a mistake," I said. A beat of silence. Then Graham came on the line. "Dana, what did you do?" I looked at the suitcase open on the hotel bed. 3 hours earlier, my husband had told me to leave our co-op before his ex-wife arrived. He'd already requested her pass for dinner. I had packed while his mother watched from the foyer. "I left," I said, "exactly like you asked." "That's not what I mean." It was the first time all evening that Graham sounded frightened. At 4:30, he had sounded merely reasonable. "Could you please stop folding for 1 second and listen to me?" "I can fold and listen." "You're rolling your sweaters like you're evacuating." "It saves space." "It's one night, Dana." I zipped a pair of boots into the cloth bag I used for travel and placed them along the side of the suitcase. Graham stood in the bedroom doorway with his tie hanging around his neck. He'd changed shirts twice. The rejected one was draped over my reading chair, still warm from his body. Beyond him, Lorraine moved through our apartment with the confidence of someone inspecting a property she expected to inherit. Cabinet doors opened and closed in the kitchen. Silverware chimed. Something scraped across the dining table. "Then why do I need boots?" I asked. Graham rubbed his forehead. "You don't. That's my point." "My point is that when your husband tells you to pack a bag, it's useful to include shoes." "I didn't tell you to pack a bag. I said maybe tonight would be easier if you stayed at the Willard. You booked me a room. I gave you an option. You prepaid it. It was a good rate." I looked up at him. Graham had a sweet face when he wasn't trying to win. Wide brown eyes, a soft mouth, hair that never quite obeyed the expensive person cutting it. It was one of the things that had once drawn me to him. He could look startled by his own mistakes. Behind him, Lorraine called, "Graham, where does Dana keep the linen napkins that don't look like dish towels?" He closed his eyes. "In the sideboard," I called. I looked. "Second drawer." "The second drawer has placemats." The other side. There was a pause, then the clean wooden slide of the correct drawer. "Found them," Lorraine said, as if she had solved a structural problem. Graham lowered his voice. "Elise is coming to discuss business." "Then discuss it at your shop." "The samples are here." "The samples were at your shop yesterday." "I brought them home." "After you invited her here." "I didn't invite her. My mother invited her." "And you requested the guest pass." He glanced toward the hall. That was all. Not denial, not surprise. Just a quick check to see whether Lorraine could hear. "She asked me to," he said. I folded a black dress over my arm and laid it on top of the sweaters. I didn't need a dress for one night at a hotel. I packed it anyway. Graham came farther into the bedroom. "If this hotel project comes through, it changes the year for us." "For your company. For us." "You mean because I won't have to move money into the maintenance account every time you borrow from it?" His face tightened. "I told you I was replacing that." "You told me after I got the overdraft alert." "That was a timing issue." "It usually is." He looked tired then, genuinely tired, and for half a second I wanted to sit beside him. I wanted to take his hanging tie and make the knot for him the way I had before every opening, every client dinner, every meeting he approached like a jury trial. Then Lorraine appeared in the doorway carrying 6 green-stemmed glasses against her chest. "Dana, these have water spots." "Those are bubbles in the glass. They look like spots. They're hand-blown." "Well, somebody used a very small hand." Graham laughed before he could stop himself. Lorraine smiled at him, pleased, then looked at the suitcase. Her expression changed by less than an inch. "Oh," she said, "you're actually going." "Apparently." "Graham said you had a migraine." Graham stared at his mother. "I said we might tell Elise she had a migraine." You said Dana had one. I'm standing right here, I said. Lorraine shifted the glasses. There's no need to be theatrical. It's a business dinner with someone who happens to have history with the family. My husband's ex-wife. She has other qualities. I'm sure she'll be relieved to hear that. Dana. Graham's voice had acquired that warning softness he used when I was in danger of making his life inconvenient. Lorraine walked away with the glasses. I heard her placing them on the dining table one by one. Graham sat on the edge of the bed. I should have handled this differently. Yes. But it's handled now. No, it's arranged now. That's different. What do you want me to do? Cancel when she's already on her way? I wanted you not to invite her into our home after I asked you not to. My mother invited her. You keep saying that like your mother hacked the building portal. He dropped his gaze. The portal mattered. Everything in the glass house came down to a portal, a form, or someone at the desk remembering a rule everyone else had forgotten. Guest passes, freight elevator reservations, contractor insurance, the annual proof that the rug covering our hallway floor met the co-op's 80% requirement. Graham hated all of it. He called it bureaucracy until he needed something, at which point it became a tiny favor I could surely handle. I closed the suitcase and pulled the zipper around 3 sides. Dana, look at me. I did. Nothing is happening with Elise. The humiliating thing was that I believed him. Graham wasn't trying to sleep with his ex-wife. If he had been, the problem might have been smaller and cleaner. He wanted her admiration, her contacts, and the version of himself he remembered from when they were married. A man whose company was growing, whose mother approved of his table manners, whose bills did not arrive with red language at the top. He wanted me to leave so that version of him could sit in my chair. I didn't accuse you of anything, I said. I can tell what you're thinking. No, you can tell what would be easiest to defend. He stood. The car will be here in 20 minutes. The car? I scheduled one. Another option, prepaid. He reached for my suitcase. I put my hand on the handle first. I've got it. Don't make this uglier than it has to be. There it was. Not cruelty exactly. Graham rarely had the courage for cruelty. It was closer to housekeeping. I was the ugly thing he needed removed before dinner. I rolled the suitcase down the hall. Our apartment had once been 2 apartments, a 1-bedroom and the narrow studio next door. Graham had owned the 1-bedroom before we married. 5 years later, when the studio became available, I sold my condo in Silver Spring, bought the additional shares, and survived 11 months of permits, dust, and a contractor who disappeared every Friday at noon. The connecting wall came down. We built a long dining room between the old spaces. Graham chose the oak paneling. I chose the windows. Lorraine had always described the project as Graham's renovation. She stood near the front door now, smoothing a runner on the foyer table. Behind her was the shallow brass bowl Graham and I had found in a junk shop in Charlottesville during our first weekend away. We'd had 2 keys then, his apartment key and the key to my condo. We dropped both into the bowl when we came home and joked that it was our merger agreement. Now the bowl held 2 building fobs, 3 sets of keys, a dry cleaning ticket, Lorraine's coral lipstick, and a tiny screwdriver nobody admitted owning. My key made a clean note when I set it inside. Lorraine watched me do it. "You'll need that," she said. "I know the desk staff." "That isn't the point." "No," I said. "It usually isn't." She pressed her lips together. For all her interference, Lorraine disliked open conflict. She preferred to place an offense on the table, cover it with a napkin, and let everyone pretend they couldn't smell it. She picked up my key and held it out. I took it. "Thank you," I said. The manners bothered her more than anger would have. Graham came from the bedroom, fastening his watch. "I'll call you after dinner." "You can text." I said I'll call. And I said you can text. Lorraine gave a little exhale. "This is exactly why having you both here would be impossible." Graham looked at the floor. That was the moment I carried with me into the elevator. not Lorraine's sentence, his silence beneath it. 3 months earlier, Lorraine had arrived at our door with 2 garment bags, a rolling case, and a fern. "The ceiling is open," she announced. I looked over her shoulder. "Where?" "In my guest bathroom." Graham came up behind me, tying the belt of his robe. "What happened?" "The pipe behind the wall apparently has been leaking since the Roosevelt administration." "Which Roosevelt, Temperi?" I asked. Lorraine considered it. "The sick one." She stepped inside and set her handbag on the foyer table. Her own apartment in Bethesda was 20 minutes away without traffic, 45 with it, and according to the plumber, temporarily without a usable second bathroom. The first bathroom worked. Lorraine disliked its shower. 10 days, she said, possibly 12. The fern remained after she moved in. So did the garment bags. For the first week, having her there was almost fun. Lorraine could cook when she felt admired, and Graham admired strategically. She made veal cutlets, lemon potatoes, and an almond cake so light, Graham ate it standing at the counter with his eyes closed. She also folded every dish towel into thirds instead of halves. "I'm improving the drawer," she said when I asked. "You're making the towels too fat to stack." "They look nicer. They're in a drawer. Beauty still counts in darkness." That became a private joke between Graham and me. For a while. At night, after Lorraine went into the studio room and shut the pocket door, Graham would flatten the towels back into halves while I dried the wine glasses. He'd kiss my shoulder and whisper, "Restoring function." Then he got busy at work. Mercer Architectural millwork had won praise and lost money in equal measure for most of our marriage. Graham could design a library wall that made wealthy people touch the wood in silence. He could not send an invoice without treating the act as an insult to the client. His operations manager had quit in January. By March, Graham was coming home after 10, carrying material samples and the smell of sawdust. Lorraine began waiting up for him. She reheated his dinner. She asked questions about walnut veneer and labor hours. She had opinions on both. I had opinions too, but mine came with spreadsheets. "Elise says boutique hotels are moving away from brass," Lorraine said one evening. We were eating almond cake at the counter. Graham stopped chewing. "You talked to Elise?" "She called to see how I was." "She calls you?" I asked. Lorraine looked at me with polite surprise. "Of course." Graham examined his fork. "Elise works with Ketter Vale now." I knew the name. Ketter Vale developed small luxury hotels inside buildings that used to be something else, banks, post offices, a women's club in Baltimore. "Good for Elise," I said. "She's in a position to recommend vendors," Lorraine continued. Graham put down his fork. "Mom?" "What?" I didn't ask her for anything. "What did you tell her?" "That business is challenging," she already knew. I watched him. "How?" Neither of them answered quickly enough. That night, I found one of Graham's proposal folders on the dining table with a yellow note stuck to the cover. "Numbers need work," the note said. "Call me." The handwriting wasn't Lorraine's. When I asked Graham about it, he said Elise had dropped off some old tax documents that still came to her address. She had been upstairs for 9 minutes. "You weren't home," he added, as if that were the helpful part. I reminded him that visitors needed to be registered. My mother let her in. "That doesn't make her your mother's guest." "I was here." "Then why didn't you request a pass?" He smiled, tired and beautiful and irritated. "Because she was here for 9 minutes, Dana. Do you want me to file a flight plan when the dry cleaner comes up?" "The dry cleaner doesn't read your proposals. She has experience. So do I, with conferences. With budgets." That isn't what I meant. It was what he meant. Graham believed my work happened because lists naturally completed themselves around me. Hotel rooms filled, vendors arrived, speakers found the correct ballroom, and 1,200 people received the lunch they had selected 4 months earlier. He considered me organized in the same fond way he considered the building engineer handy. I went to bed before him. The next morning, I found the brass bowl moved 6 inches to the left and Lorraine's new building fob nestled beside mine. I held it up when Graham walked into the foyer. "What is this?" He glanced at it, then at the coffee in his hand. "It's temporary." "Whose temporary?" "My mother's." From the studio, Lorraine called. "I can hear you." "Good," I said. Graham took the fob from my fingers and dropped it back into the bowl. It struck the brass with a bright, confident ring. "She's family," he said. "She shouldn't have to ask permission every time she comes home." "She isn't coming home," I said. Lorraine opened the pocket door. She was wearing one of my bathrobes, the gray waffle knit one from a hotel in Montreal. Graham looked at the robe, then at me, and seemed to understand that the conversation had acquired too many fronts. "I assumed you wouldn't mind," Lorraine said. "Mine is in the wash. It's fine. You don't sound fine." "I'm talking about the fob." "Oh," she tightened the belt. "What about it?" "You're staying here temporarily. You don't live here." "That's a warm distinction. It's an accurate one." Graham stepped between us without actually moving. The desk kept calling Dana whenever Mom came in. "Twice," I said. "I felt like a delivery," Lorraine said, standing there while they phoned upstairs to ask if I was expected. "That's how guests enter the building. I'm not a guest. I'm your mother." Graham set his coffee on the foyer table. The brass bowl shifted when the mug touched it. "You're my mother," he said. "You're Dana's guest." Lorraine stared at him. It surprised all three of us. Then she nodded once. "Of course." She went into the studio and slid the pocket door shut. Graham looked at me as if he had just pulled someone from a burning car. "Thank you," I said. "I'll take care of the fob." "When?" "Today." It remained in the brass bowl that evening. The next morning it was gone, and I allowed myself to believe he had returned it. Lorraine became gracious in a way that required witnesses. She bought peonies for the dining table. She made my coffee before I came into the kitchen, although she used too much milk. When I worked late, she texted to ask what time dinner should be held. Held was Lorraine's word. Dinner did not wait. Dinner was held. For 4 days, she and I moved around each other with the exaggerated care of two people carrying full glasses. On the 5th, she asked if I wanted help repairing a loose hem on my black dress. "I can take it to the cleaner. It's 3 stitches. I don't have the right thread." "I do." She disappeared into the studio and returned with a sewing kit that had belonged to Graham's father. The case was brown leather, soft at the corners. Inside, every needle had its own paper sleeve. "Frank could fix anything made of fabric," she said. "Buttons, canvas, upholstery, not feelings." It was the first funny thing she had ever said about her marriage. I put the dress on the table, and Lorraine matched the thread so perfectly I could barely see it. Her hands were smaller than mine, the knuckles swollen but steady. "Elise gave him that sewing kit," she said. I almost laughed. Of course she did. She found it at an estate sale. Frank adored her. That must have been hard when they divorced. Lorraine drew the needle through the cloth. It was a divorce, not a death. People act as if affection has to follow paperwork. "What did Graham tell you about why they divorced?" "He said they were unhappy, efficient. He doesn't like to speak badly of people he once loved." I watched the thread disappear into the seam. "No," I said. "He prefers to let the current person imagine the worst." Lorraine's mouth moved, almost a smile. She tied off the repair and snipped the thread with tiny gold scissors. "There, you'll never see it." 2 nights later, I came home early and found Elise sitting at my dining table. She had one of my green-stemmed glasses in her hand. The glasses were made from cloudy, recycled glass, each one slightly different. I had bought 8 from an artist at Eastern Market after Graham said they looked like something from a French train station. We had broken 2 over the years. Lorraine had set out the remaining 6, along with olives, cheese, and a bowl of almonds. Elise looked up first. She was not what I wanted her to be. She wasn't smug or overly polished. Her blonde hair was pinned with a pencil, and she wore a navy jacket over a wrinkled white shirt. There was sawdust on one sleeve. "Dana," she said, standing, "I thought you had an event tonight." "It ended early." Lorraine came out of the hall closet carrying a stack of folded linen. "Look who escaped before dessert," she said. Graham was at the far end of the table, leaning over a set of drawings. He straightened too quickly. Elise brought the Keter Vale specs. "I can see that." Mom ordered food. "I can see that too." Elise set down the glass. A pale print from her lipstick marked the rim. "I should go." "Nonsense," Lorraine said. "We've barely started." "Stay," Graham said. He said it to Elise while looking at me. I put my work bag on the floor. "Yes, stay. I'd hate to be the one who makes this awkward." Lorraine opened her mouth, but Elise spoke first. "I was leaving anyway. Graham, the banquette drawings need to show access to the electrical panel. They'll reject them if they don't." "I know. They rejected the same thing in Richmond." I said I know. There was history in the irritation, but not romance. Elise knew the exact place where Graham stopped listening because shame had entered the room. She packed her papers without hurrying. At the foyer, she reached into her bag and handed Lorraine a building fob. "Thank you," she said. The apartment went still. I looked at the fob, then at Lorraine. "You gave her yours." She was carrying samples. "You gave a non-resident unrestricted access to the building?" "I met her downstairs." "You just thanked her for bringing it back." Lorraine lifted her chin. The desk was busy. Elise looked from Lorraine to me. "She asked me to bring up 2 binders. I didn't realize there was an issue." "There isn't," Graham said. "There is now," I said. Elise put the fob in my hand instead of Lorraine's. "I'm sorry," she said. I believed her, which made everything worse. After she left, I placed the fob in the brass bowl. "Your mother is done using that," I said. Graham gathered the drawings into a stack. "Can we not turn this into a federal case?" "The building has security rules. The woman carried 2 binders through a lobby. With a fob, you told me you returned." He looked at Lorraine. She looked back at him with perfect calm. "I asked for it again," she said. "The plumber needed access to my apartment this morning, and I didn't know when I'd be back." "That sentence doesn't make sense," I said. "It makes sense to me." "Mom," Graham said. Lorraine folded the linen over her arm. "I'm going to bed." "It's 8:15, I said. "I've had a long day." She walked into the studio and shut the door. Graham began clearing the table. "You lied to me." I returned it. She asked for it back. "And you didn't mention that." I forgot. "You requested the fob through my resident account. Our resident account. You don't know the password. That doesn't make it yours." The glass Elise had used stood between us, the lipstick print drying on the rim. "Revoke it," I said. "I will. Now. Dana, take out your phone." He stared at me, then pulled it from his pocket. It took him 3 attempts to find the building portal. He had forgotten the password to his own account and had to reset it. When the confirmation appeared, I took Lorraine's fob from the bowl and put it in the drawer beneath the table. Graham watched me. "You won," he said. I had never felt less like I had won anything. The security office called 11 days later while I was standing backstage at the Marriott, trying to locate a cardiologist who had wandered away before his panel. The caller ID said Glasshouse Desk. I tucked the phone between my ear and shoulder. "This is Dana." "Mrs. Mercer, this is Martin Bell from Building Management. Do you have a moment?" Behind the curtain, 400 people were waiting for a session on hospital purchasing contracts. My missing cardiologist texted that he was in the lobby, though he was actually outside a ballroom on the opposite side of the building. "Not a great one. What happened?" "We've had another access issue involving Ms. Ward." I stopped walking. "Elise Ward?" "Yes. She entered yesterday at 2:18 using Mrs. Mercer's fob. For one confused second, I thought he meant mine. My mother-in-law is Mrs. Lorraine Mercer. That's the fob. It was revoked. It was marked revoked in the portal, but the status didn't sync to the physical credential because it wasn't returned to the desk. I closed my eyes. Was anyone home? No. The apartment door was opened with a key. The ballroom coordinator waved at me frantically from the wings. "I'm sorry, Martin. I need 5 minutes." "Of course. There's also a question about property removed from the unit." "What property?" He hesitated. "A banker's box and 2 sample cases. The missing cardiologist appeared through the wrong door with a cup of coffee." I pointed him toward the stage and walked into an empty service corridor. "What was in the box?" "We don't know. Ms. Ward carried it out." The box held speaker agreements, catering revisions, and signed vendor forms for 3 conferences. Copies existed in our office system, but several originals had handwritten changes. On the side, in black marker, I had written Dana Fall Events. Elise returned it that afternoon. She came to the Marriott herself, balancing the box against one hip. The label faced outward. "I thought it was Graham's," she said. "It says Dana." "I know. I saw that in the car. Why were you in my apartment?" "Lorraine said Graham left the Ketter Vale samples there and the submission was due." "Why did you have a key?" Her face changed. "She left one in the bowl." "The brass bowl. Our key bowl." Lorraine had not simply lent Elise a fob. She had sent her to the place where our keys waited. "I shouldn't have gone up," Elise said. "I was trying to help him meet the deadline." "Did Graham know?" I texted him. "Before or after?" She looked down at the box. That was answer enough. The co-op's warning arrived by email that evening, followed by a printed copy slipped beneath our door. Unauthorized credential sharing, entry by an unregistered visitor, removal of property. Any repeat could result in suspension of Graham's and Lorraine's guest privileges pending board review. Lorraine read the letter at the dining table. "This makes me sound like a burglar," she said. "You gave someone a key to our apartment." "She was collecting Graham's property. She took mine, by accident." Graham stood at the window, one hand in his pocket. "Say something," I told him. He turned. "It was a mistake." "Whose?" "Everyone's. I was at work." "You left the samples in the apartment," he said. I stared at him. He heard it after he said it. I watched him hear it and decide not to take it back. Martin Bell asked us to meet with him and 2 members of the security committee. I brought the warning letter, the fob number, and a timeline. Graham brought coffee for everyone and called the meeting a misunderstanding until Martin played the lobby footage. On the screen, Elise entered without stopping. 15 minutes later, she left carrying my box. "We're not alleging theft," Martin said. "We're addressing access. The committee offered an alternative to suspending Graham's guest privileges. We could sign a compliance agreement. Lorraine's fob would be surrendered. Elise would be flagged in the system, and any future request for her admission would require approval from both shareholders." "Is that necessary?" Graham asked. "It is, if you want to retain normal guest access," Martin said. I signed. Graham skimmed the first paragraph, turned directly to the signature page, and signed beneath me. Outside the office, he loosened his tie. "Happy?" "No." "You got exactly what you wanted. I wanted you to care that a person entered our home without my permission." "She wasn't a stranger." I looked at him. That was the first moment I understood the lock on our door had never been the boundary I thought it was. The boundary was Graham. And Graham kept opening. He kept opening even after Lorraine went back to Bethesda. Her bathroom ceiling had been closed for 9 days when I carried the fern to her car. She said she had stayed because Graham was under pressure and needed proper meals. Graham said she had stayed because her building was painting the hallway. Lorraine said both things could be true. At the curb, she opened her trunk and rearranged 3 tote bags to make room for the fern. "You know," she said, "Elise didn't mean to take your papers." "I know." And she was mortified by that video. She should be. Lorraine pushed the fern into place. "You enjoy being right more than you enjoy being happy." That sounds like something a person says when she's wrong. She almost smiled. "I hope you 2 figure this out," she said. "Marriage is mostly deciding which offenses are worth surviving." "Is that what you did with Frank?" Her hand stilled on the trunk. "Your generation thinks every honest question deserves an answer," Then she closed the trunk and drove away with the fern pressed against the rear window, like a passenger trying to escape. The apartment felt enormous without her. For 2 days, Graham and I moved through it carefully, relieved by the quiet and ashamed of the relief. On the third evening, he brought home Thai food and set the containers on the dining table. "I made an appointment," he said. "With whom?" "A marriage counselor." I stopped opening the bag. "You did?" "Next Thursday. Her name is Dr. Patel. She's in DuPont." The gesture was so exactly what I had asked for that suspicion felt ungrateful. Okay, thank you." He handed me chopsticks. That sounded painful. It was unfamiliar. I deserve that. I looked at him. He looked back without defending himself. For a few weeks, we tried. Dr. Patel's office had 2 matching chairs and 1 sofa placed, so that choosing the sofa felt like a public vote. Graham always sat beside me. He held my hand when he talked about the terror of losing his business. He admitted he had allowed Lorraine to make decisions because opposing her consumed energy he didn't have. "She fills a space," he said, "if you don't fill it first." "Then you let me fight her for it," I said. He winced. "Yes." He said the correct things without sounding rehearsed. That was Graham's gift. He could arrive at honesty in the room where honesty was requested. At home, honesty lost its appointment time. We made 3 rules: no family access credentials, no business meetings in the apartment without both of us agreeing, no business money moving through household accounts. Graham returned Lorraine's physical fob to the desk. Martin Bell emailed me a receipt. Graham moved the Kettervale samples back to his shop and even photographed the cleared dining table, sending it to me with the caption, "Scene of former crime." I laughed at my desk. That night, he took my green-stemmed glass from the cabinet, poured wine into it, and carried it to me in the bath. "Peace offering," he said. "You know these aren't wine glasses. They have stems and hold wine. So does a martini glass. A martini glass holds regret." I moved my feet so he could sit on the edge of the tub. For a while, I could see the route back to us. Then I opened the maintenance account on a Tuesday morning and found $8,000 missing. The transfer had gone to Mercer Architectural Millwork at 6:12 the previous evening, while Graham and I were eating pasta 10 feet from his phone. He had told me about a difficult call with his landlord. He had asked whether the sauce needed salt. I printed the account page at work and put it on the dining table. He came home carrying 2 bags of groceries. "What's that?" "You know." He set down the bags. "I can replace it by Friday." One of our 3 rules. It's Tuesday. It was one of 3. The quarterly maintenance payment doesn't come out until Monday. That's not the point. The Kettervale deposit is supposed to hit Thursday. You don't have the contract. I have a letter of intent, which is not a contract. His eyes changed. Not much. Just enough to show me that I had crossed from wife to creditor. I had to make payroll. "So you took our housing money." "I moved it for 3 days. Without telling me. I'm telling you now. You're explaining now. You weren't planning to tell me if you put it back." He began unpacking groceries, milk, coffee, lemons, a jar of mustard we already had. "If I miss payroll, people don't make rent. If we miss maintenance, what do you think happens?" "We're not going to miss it, because I'll cover it." He placed the mustard beside the other jar and shut the refrigerator. "I didn't ask you to." "You never do. You just leave a hole shaped exactly like me." He put both hands on the counter. "Elise can get this proposal in front of Kettervale's partners. 1 meeting gets us through the year. There is no us in your payroll. There's us in everything I lose if the company fails." It was a cruel sentence because it was true. His shop lease had my personal guarantee from the expansion 3 years earlier. If the company folded badly, the consequences would not stop at his office door. "Send me the letter of intent," I said. "Why?" "Because $8,000 left our account." "You think I'm lying?" "I think you're scared." He looked away. That evening, the letter arrived in my inbox. It expressed interest in reviewing Mercer as one of 4 possible millwork vendors. No deposit was mentioned. The $8,000 returned Friday, but only because I transferred enough from my savings to cover the maintenance draft and told Graham I would reverse it when his deposit appeared. It never did. He stopped attending counseling after that. First he had a client emergency. Then Dr. Patel's office was inconvenient. Then he said we were paying someone to translate complaints we already understood. Lorraine began calling him during dinner. He would glance at my face, reject the call, then take his plate into the study and call her back. The invitation to dinner arrived through the building portal on a Wednesday afternoon. Guest requested, Elise Ward. Date, Friday. Arrival time, 7 p.m. Sponsor, Graham Mercer. My approval status showed pending. I took a screenshot and sent it to Graham with a question mark. He called immediately. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you requested a guest pass for Elise. Mom is arranging a business dinner. At her apartment? At ours. No. Dana, listen. No business meetings at home without both of us agreeing. That was Rule 2. I remember because there were only 3. The hotel people moved the presentation up. Elise can get us feedback before we submit. Meet at the shop. The finished samples are here. Why? Silence. You moved them back, I said. I needed to compare them against the paneling. You brought them home so you could tell me they were already here. That's absurd. It's efficient. He breathed into the phone. My mother has already ordered dinner. Then she can eat it. Can you please not make this a war? I'm pressing decline. Wait, his fear caught me. Not fear of losing Elise, fear of losing the business. Come home, he said. We'll talk. When I arrived, Lorraine was measuring the dining table. She held one end of the tape against the edge and stretched it toward the windows. Several white catering boxes were stacked on the kitchen counter. You're early, she said. It's my home. No one suggested otherwise. The tape snapped into its case. Graham came from the bedroom in shirt sleeves. We need 10 minutes. With or without your mother? Lorraine lifted both hands. I'm furniture. Furniture doesn't order dinner. Some furniture would if it could see your refrigerator. Graham took my elbow. I pulled away before he could steer me. Please, he said. He led me into the bedroom and closed the door. The room already looked disturbed. His charcoal suit lay across the bed. My small suitcase sat on the luggage stand with its handle raised. I stared at it. I thought you might want space tonight, he said. You took out my suitcase. I booked you a room at the Willard. What did you tell her? Who? Elise. That we're having dinner. Did you tell her your wife is being removed before she arrives? You're not being removed. My suitcase is out. Because every conversation about Elise turns into this. Into what? You making me prove I choose you by destroying something else. I looked at him for so long he stepped back. That is a spectacular sentence, I said. You know what I mean. I don't think you do. He sat on the bed, moving his suit aside. Ketter Vale could keep 12 people employed. It could save the lease. It could get the maintenance money back into our account. Our maintenance is paid because I paid it. And I hate that. Not enough to stop using it. He covered his face with both hands. When he looked up, the anger was gone. Give me one night, he said. Please. I can't manage you and my mother in the same room, and I can't ask her to leave after she made this happen. There it was, not Elise, not the contract, management. You don't have to manage me. You know what I mean? Yes, I said. I finally do. I packed one suitcase. Lorraine watched from the foyer. Graham ordered the car he called an option. I carried one green-stemmed glass wrapped in my black dress because I could not bear the thought of Lorraine filling all 6. At the hotel, I set the glass beside the minibar and opened my laptop. The guest request still waited in the portal. I declined it. Then I canceled the private dining room reservation Lorraine had made through my resident profile. The caterer's boxes were already upstairs, so I left those alone. let them eat cold sea bass at my table. I changed my direct deposit to an account in my name. I scheduled my exact half of the next maintenance payment and turned off overdraft transfers from my savings. I emailed the landlord of Graham's shop and said I would not extend my personal guarantee when the lease came up for renewal. At 7:04, Martin called. After Graham took the phone and asked what I had done, I listened to him work through disbelief, outrage, and pleading. Elise is standing downstairs. Yes. This is humiliating. Yes, approve it. No. Dana, the whole point of the agreement was to prevent unauthorized access. I'm here. Mom is here. The agreement says both shareholders. You know, I didn't read that. You signed it. Lorraine said something in the background. Graham lowered his voice. My mother says you're trying to destroy me. Your mother says a lot from my foyer. Come home. You told me to leave. I'm telling you to come back because you need my approval. He went quiet. For 1 second, I almost pressed the button. I could picture Elise beneath the chandelier, trapped in a family humiliation she had not designed. I could picture Graham upstairs sweating through the shirt he'd changed twice. I could hear Dr. Patel asking what outcome I wanted. I wanted my husband to understand that access to me was not an appliance built into the apartment. No, I said. I ended the call. Graham left 9 voicemails. Lorraine left 1. Elise left none. When I returned the next morning, the catering boxes were still on the counter. One had been opened. 3 green-stemmed glasses stood in the sink. You took one, Lorraine said. She was seated at the dining table in yesterday's clothes. Yes, you broke up a set. It was my set. Everything is your set, your apartment, your approval. Graham stood by the windows with a mug in his hand. Did Elise leave? I asked. She had no choice, he said. She had many choices. Coming was one. Lorraine pushed back her chair. I'm going home. Good, I said. Graham set down the mug. Don't speak to her like that. The calmness in his voice frightened me more than shouting would have. Lorraine collected her handbag. At the foyer, she paused over the brass bowl, perhaps expecting to find a key that no longer belonged to her. After the door closed, Graham said, You abandoned the apartment. For 1 night, at the hotel you booked. You left your key. I took it back. You canceled dinner, blocked my guest, separated money, and contacted my landlord, my guarantee, our marriage. You used both like they were the same account. His face hardened. I've already emailed Martin and the board president. I told them you moved out and are using access rules to interfere with a lawful shareholder. My stomach dropped. You told the board I moved out. You did. For 1 night. You packed. You put the suitcase on the bed. And you filled it. That was the difficulty with Graham. He could stand in the wreckage of a decision and identify the one object my fingerprints had touched. The co-op would not decide our marriage, Martin told me later. Graham and I held equal shares. Neither of us could lock out the other. Neither could claim sole use of the combined apartment without an agreement or a court order. A lawyer recommended by a colleague said leaving once did not surrender my ownership, but patterns mattered. So did written statements. So did who paid what, who occupied which rooms, and whether either spouse behaved as if the separation were permanent. When I returned that evening with my suitcase, Graham had moved my work files, clothes, and toiletries into the studio room. The pocket door was open. On the bed lay the brown leather sewing kit Lorraine had used to repair my dress, as if someone had packed me a small inheritance from a family I was being asked to leave. Graham stood in the dining room. You wanted space, he said. I rolled my suitcase into the studio. Then I closed the pocket door between us and turned the old brass lock. The lock was decorative more than defensive. It had been part of the old studio, a thumb-sized piece of brass that could probably have been opened with a butter knife. Graham never tried. For 6 days, we lived 20 feet apart and communicated by text. Plumber coming Thursday. Your mail is on the table. Did you use my black charger? The apartment had 2 bathrooms, but only 1 kitchen. I began going in before 6 to make coffee and pack lunch. Graham started buying breakfast on his way to the shop. He left the receipts in his pockets and they went through the washer because I stopped checking his clothes before starting my own load. The first time he found paper pulp stuck to 3 shirts, he stood outside the pocket door holding them. "You could have warned me that there was paper in your pockets, that you were doing laundry." "I was doing my laundry." He looked down at the shirts. "So this is what we're doing." I closed the door. The glass house sent its monthly resident bulletin, and for the first time since we combined the units, I forwarded it to Graham without highlighting anything. He missed the window inspection sign-up and had to pay a rescheduling fee. He complained until Martin Bell attached the 2 reminder emails Graham had ignored, the refrigerator filled with foods that almost made meals. Graham bought parsley, half and half, 3 kinds of cheese, and no bread. I labeled my leftovers after he ate a container of lentils I had planned to take to work. One evening, I found him eating mustard on crackers at the dining table. "You bought 2 jars," I said. He gave me a look that was almost a laugh. For a second, the old reflex rose in me. I wanted to open the freezer, find the soup behind the ice tray, and heat it for him. Instead, I filled my water glass. He watched me leave. Lorraine came twice. Both times, Graham registered her at the desk and met her in the lobby. The first visit, she stayed 4 hours. The second lasted 18 minutes. Afterward, Graham knocked on the studio door. "My mother wants her sewing kit." I picked up the brown leather case from the desk. "Did she say why it was put on my bed?" "She says she didn't put it there." "You did?" "I moved everything I thought was yours." "You thought your father's sewing kit was mine." "You and Mom used it together." I handed it to him. He ran his thumb over the worn leather. "She offered to lend me money," he said. I waited. "Not enough for the shop. Enough to cover a couple months here." "That's between you and her. She thinks you're trying to make me default so the board will give you my shares." "The board can't give me your shares." "I know that. Do you?" His jaw tightened. "You don't have to enjoy this." "I don't." "You look pretty comfortable. I'm living in one room of an apartment I paid half to create. You paid for the studio. We became equal shareholders. You agreed to that. Because we were married. We still are." "That depends on which email I'm reading." He meant the letter my attorney had sent, requesting financial records and proposing that we use a mediator. The letter did not ask him to leave. It did not demand the apartment. It said we needed a temporary agreement about household expenses and occupancy. Graham had responded by sending 14 pages of bank statements and a handwritten list titled Dana's Disruptions. The denied guest pass was first. "I didn't make the list," I said. "No, you hired someone to make a cleaner one." He walked away with the sewing kit tucked beneath his arm. Elise texted me the next morning. "Could we meet? I owe you information, not an apology." Though probably one of those too. I considered ignoring her. Then she sent a screenshot. It was a message from Lorraine. "Dana will be at the Willard." Graham wants this evening to feel like the old days, before every meal required permission. I agreed to coffee. Elise chose a place near Union Station where no one lingered because the chairs seemed designed to correct posture. She was already seated when I arrived, her leather portfolio on the chair beside her. "I ordered you tea," she said. "Lorraine said you don't drink coffee after 11. "It's 10:30. She was very specific. I sat across from her. Without the hotel plans between them, she and Graham had probably looked good together. They both dressed as if they might be asked to present something. They both mistook last-minute intensity for intimacy. Elise pushed her phone toward me. There were messages from Lorraine, then Graham. The ones from Lorraine were almost cheerful. Dana needed time away. The apartment had originally been Graham's. Everyone would be happier once practical arrangements caught up with emotional reality. Graham's were shorter. She's making the shares a loyalty test. Once Ketter Vale is signed, the money changes the conversation. If she wants out, I can buy the studio portion back. If she stays, she'll have to stop treating every decision like a board vote. Farther down, Elise had asked, "Does Dana know I'm coming Friday?" Graham had answered, "She knows it's necessary." I slid the phone back. "I knew your marriage was bad," Elise said. "I didn't know you were still trying to fix it." "Did he tell you we were separating?" "He let his mother tell me. Then he didn't correct her." That sounded like Graham. "What did you think dinner was?" "A business dinner." She looked out the window. "And maybe a little revenge." "Against me?" "Against the version of my life where he married someone competent and became happier. The honesty was so clean I couldn't resent it immediately." "Was he happier?" I asked. "For a while, probably. And you?" "For a while." She wrapped both hands around her coffee. "I didn't come to take your apartment or your husband. I wanted the Ketter Vale project. If Graham got it, I would lead the interior package. It's excellent work." "Then why show me this?" "Because he lied about his production capacity." I said nothing. "He told Ketter Vale he could run 2 shifts. He can barely staff one. He listed a finishing subcontractor who stopped working with him last year." "How do you know?" "I called them before putting my name behind the recommendation. I thought about the missing $8,000, the unsigned lease, Graham eating mustard on crackers in our dining room. Did you withdraw it?" "I withdrew my recommendation. They can still consider him if he submits independently, but they won't." "No." She reached into the portfolio and removed printed copies of the messages. "I'm not giving you these because I think you're entitled to win. I'm giving them to you because he used my professional name to create leverage at home." "Thank you." I should never have taken Lorraine's key. No, I knew it was strange. Yes, I told myself it was their family. It was my home. She nodded. "I know." There was the apology, not a beautiful one, a useful one. Graham learned about the withdrawn recommendation before I reached the office. He called 6 times. On the 7th, I answered. "What did you say to Elise?" "She told me you overstated your capacity." "That isn't what I asked." "I didn't ask her to withdraw anything." "You didn't have to. You made me look unstable. You took household money and claimed it was backed by a deposit that didn't exist. It would have existed if you hadn't blocked the dinner. Elise found the staffing problem before dinner. You poisoned her against me. I've spoken to her once. Once was enough." He hung up. That evening, he was waiting in the dining room with the compliance agreement, the maintenance statements, and my email to his landlord spread across the table. "You built a case," he said. "I started keeping records after your ex-wife entered our home with your mother's key. You're enjoying that sentence. It doesn't improve with repetition." He pointed at the landlord email. "They want 6 months additional security if you don't renew the guarantee. I told you I wouldn't. You told them before you told me. I told you 3 years ago I regretted signing it. That isn't the same thing. No, this time I acted." He sat down. The fight went out of him so quickly that I stayed standing. "I need 3 months," he said. "Approve the new lease guarantee. Help me clean up the receivables. You know which clients actually pay when they say they will. You want me to work for the company now? I want you to help your husband. You want the labor back. I want my life back. Your life required me not to have one." He stared at the papers. Then he said, "I'll forgive the pass. It was such a strange offer that I thought I had misheard. You'll forgive me. If we stop here, no separation, no mediator, no more letters, I'll tell my mother Elise is out of our lives. You already lost Elise." His face changed. I regretted saying it, but not enough to take it back. He gathered the papers, aligning their edges with his palm. "Then I want to buy your shares." "With what?" "My mother will help." Lorraine did not help. I learned that during mediation, when Graham admitted the amount she had offered would barely cover the difference between his business debt and the loan he would need for my half. "She has an apartment she could sell," he said. The mediator looked at him over her glasses. "Has she offered to sell it?" "She said she would do whatever it took." "That is not a number." Later, Lorraine called me. I hope you're satisfied, she said. With what? You've made him ask me to sell my home. I didn't make him ask. You know he can't lose that apartment. His father installed half the library himself, and I paid for the studio, the combination, and half the maintenance. You could sell to him at a family price. What family? She was quiet. I almost apologized. Instead, I asked, Are you selling your apartment? No. The answer came fast. Why not? I'm not uprooting my life because my son made poor financial decisions. There it was, spoken plainly from the one person who had spent months asking me to do exactly that. I agree, I said. She exhaled. You think that makes us allies? No. Good. Before she hung up, she said, Frank's sewing kit was on your bed because I left it there. He repaired the first curtains in that studio when Graham was deciding whether to buy it. I thought you should have something that remembered the apartment before you. Before me? Before all of us started claiming it. The appraisal came in higher than either Graham or I expected. That made buying him out harder and selling more tempting. For 3 days, I considered it. A sale would have been cleaner. I could take my half, buy something smaller, and never again walk through a dining room where my suitcase had waited. Staying meant a larger loan, less savings, and years of paying for rooms that held memories I no longer trusted. At dusk, the glasshouse windows turned the city into bands of copper and gray. I sat in the studio with one of the green-stemmed glasses and listened to Graham moving through the kitchen. I could leave. That was the choice he thought he had made for me. I could also stay. My final proposal gave him 2 options. He could buy my half at the appraised value within 60 days, with documented financing, or I would buy his under the same terms. If neither of us secured financing, we would list the apartment. He tried to negotiate the value of the original 1-bedroom separately from the studio. The co-op's records did not support it. We had combined the shares and made them equal. He had signed that document too. I qualified for the loan by using my salary, most of my remaining savings, and none of the money from his business. Graham had no financing. He accepted my buyout on the 58th day. Mercer Architectural Millwork did not disappear. It became smaller. Graham gave up the large shop when the lease ended and moved into a shared fabrication space in Hyattsville. He sold 1 machine, laid off 2 employees, and began using an outside finisher. The work he kept was work he could actually complete. Lorraine found him a rental near the shop. She called it temporary until he asked her to stop. On his last evening at the glass house, Graham carried 2 boxes to the elevator and returned alone. The apartment looked stripped and unfamiliar. The oak paneling remained. So did the windows. His charcoal suit was gone from the bedroom. The mustard jars were gone from the refrigerator. He stood in the foyer, turning his keys around 1 finger. I did love you, he said. I know. You say that like it doesn't matter. It matters. It just didn't protect me. He looked toward the dining room. I thought you'd always fix the part after. I know. He set his keys in the brass bowl. The sound was softer than I expected. I placed my own key beside them while I walked him to the door. After the elevator closed, I returned to the bowl and lifted his ring of keys out. Martin would deactivate the fob in the morning. Graham had signed the transfer. Nothing depended on this small act. Still, I put his keys in an envelope and sealed it. Then I poured wine into the green-stemmed glass I had carried to the hotel in my suitcase. I opened the apartment door, stepped into the hall, and locked it behind me. When I let myself back in, my key landed alone in the brass bowl with 1 clear note. This time, no one else called it home.